Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this CQI IRCA webinar. My name is Desmond, and I'll be navigating us through the proceedings today. Before we kick off, a couple of logistics. We've got 400 or so people booked on today, so all of your microphones will be off. However, you will see on your panel a Q&A function where we invite you to put your comments, questions about today's topic. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, you can put your queries in there, and a member of the CQI team will come to your rescue. Now, the slides, will they be available? Yes, if you click on the handout section, you will find the slides for today's event. Will the recording be available? Yes, it will be available in the members area of the CQI website, along with the slides in due course. So here we are, 3 months into the UK-EU trade deal. As the UK's Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply said, it's difficult to know where the effects of the pandemic end and Brexit begins. Yesterday's trade figures from the UK's Office for National Statistics showed that exports of goods from the UK to the EU rebounded in February after a record fall in January, but a more modest increase in imports of goods from the EU to the UK in the same period. Meanwhile, services imports and exports have consistently remained at a lower level since Q2 last year, as they continue to be affected by the coronavirus restrictions. Now, while the ONS suggests that additional paperwork and higher transportation costs were the biggest challenges currently facing UK imports and exports in February, it also recognises that these trade figures are likely reflecting multiple other factors: the unwinding of stockpiles, ongoing pandemic restrictions, and lower demand due to the state of the UK and global economies. Nevertheless, the British Chambers of Commerce report that almost half of exporters to the EU have met obstacles. The SMMT has characterised the automotive industry as pedalling furiously below the waterline to keep supply chains going. The ADS has described aerospace and defence companies as experiencing a day-to-day battle to make the new arrangements work. And in addition to the movement of material, CQI corporate members report that Brexit has exacerbated the quality skills deficit in the UK, as EU workers have returned home or are more difficult to recruit. In the CQI feature released today with the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, the CIP CEO says it does seem that SMEs are being disproportionately impacted, as they do not have the resources that larger businesses do to manage the new barriers. The Federation of Small Business has found many small British firms have temporarily or even permanently halted sales to the EU due to the new trading rules, and we'll hear from the FSB today. Outside of the UK, Ireland's Central Statistics Office said that exports to the UK fell by 65% compared to January 2020. Brexit or pandemic? Difficult to say, but today we'll hear from the Republic of Ireland-based Mercury Engineering on their experience of navigating the new trading and conformity assessment arrangements. On the bright side, for Britain at least, The Economist does see opportunity for the UK in regulatory divergence where that's possible. The question, The Economist says, is how Britain's regulators wield the new powers Brexit has given them. Now, standards and conformity assessment are an integral part of our regulatory landscape, and indeed the UK quality infrastructure is already this year considering how it can support the commercialisation of innovation at speed. Do have a look at my recent blog on the CQI website on that topic. But right here and now, as a result of the trade deal, some of the rules on test inspection and certification have changed, some have not and will not. And we'll speak to a key part of UKQI, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, today to get some clarification. Now, as we move through the presenters today, please do add your Brexit experiences, challenges and opportunities, and of course any questions through the Q&A function while we hear from the panel, and we'll get to as many of those as we can in the last section of today's webinar. So let's start outside of the UK and hear from Trevor Colbert, Head of Quality for Mercury Engineering, and find out how an international firm based out of the Republic of Ireland has been experiencing and responding to the UK-EU trade deal. Trevor, thanks for joining us, and over to you.
Thanks, Vincent. I was very happy to be here to share our experience with the CQI. We can move on just onto a little bio for myself. I'm 25 years in the construction industry, joined in the early 90s. I'm involved as an internal auditor, registered internal auditor. I'm also a lead auditor to ISO 9001. I've 15 years specifically in quality construction. I'm a member of the Technical Committee number 7 in Ireland with the National Standards Authority of Ireland on quality, specifically working with ISO 9001. And I'm also involved with the Institute of Concrete Technology. And we'll just move on to the bio on Mercury Engineering. So we're a prime contractor in both the UK and European markets. We work specifically with blue chip clients where our revenue is into and over €1 billion. And moving on. We're a prime contractor, as I say, in the home market. We're also specifically in the UK and Europe. We're a major competitor across Europe. We've 2,500 direct employees, and we've an extensive supply chain across both jurisdictions. Our services are specifically planning, design, CSA, civil structural architecture, mechanical, electrical, fire protection, information technology, facilities management. So again, working in both jurisdictions, the new Brexit move has introduced a few new challenges for ourselves. And moving on. Some of the challenges we found from January this year is our supply chain and the requirements of our clients, and specifically blue chip clients, that products within the construction industry and require UK conformity assessment, declaration of performances, and CE marking. We'll just move on to the next slide here. Mercury, our European operations is wide and diverse. We've vendors exporting and importing from Europe, using the construction products regulations. In the UK, again, we've vendors moving products from the UK to Europe and vice versa. And this is definitely added to the challenges. Moving on. I'm specifically focusing on construction products we're working with at the moment. So we're working with mainly harmonized standards. The non-harmonized standard is kind of ready mix concrete that doesn't require CE marking, but the products related to it does. What we're going to have to find and the challenges we've put in place is we have to audit our vendors to specific in Europe now, CE marking. Pre-Brexit, it wouldn't have mattered. Once we were in the UK, we were still, trying to audit to the CE marking declaration and performances with products being supplied into ourselves. Whereas we've added a new level of the UK conformity assessment mark. So again, it's structural steel, the welding codes, etc. All the European codes still apply. I think the UK conformity assessment is still more or less in line with the same requirements as CE marking. However, it's just an additional level of requirement for ourselves to be aware of. Currently, the conformity assessment in the UK is a new addition to ourselves, and we just have to be aware from January of this year, working in Europe, European vendors need to be registered in the EU 27. Just moving forward. This is currently what the picture looks like for us in 2021. So we specifically got products from the UK coming into Europe can still carry the CE mark provided they were on the market pre-Brexit. Post-Brexit, it's very much just been a cut-off point for the CE mark. And however, the UK government are still allowing CE mark products being used within the UK until 2022. And then the picture in 2022 will look very different. So move on. 2022, we're going to have a clean cut from both requirements on the construction product regulations within the EU 27. They will require specific CE marking. For projects within the UK, we're going to have to source products that are certified to the UK conformity assessment marking, and it may require certain suppliers and vendors to move into either Europe to ensure their products are CE marked, or on the other side of it, if they're in the UK, they will need to work within the UK market, and they will need to register with the notification body for the UK conformity assessment. So that's where we will have two aligned audits for our suppliers. One will be for Europe with CE marking, and the additional requirement will be for the UK conformity assessment, and that's where we're looking at product compliance to clients' requirements. And moving on. This is just what we were currently working with. So kind of pre-Brexit, you had a UK company here that would have carried a CE marked declaration of performance. And post-Brexit, on the middle shot there, you would have the UK conformity assessment declaration of performance, and then continuing on within Europe, you'll see the CE mark. And so this is the type of thing that we'll be looking for within our documentation when we're auditing specific vendors and suppliers. And moving on. This is some of the right to audit considerations post-Brexit. So manufacturers, importers and distributors will need to take the necessary steps to ensure they hold certificates under the responsibility of an EU 27 notification body for CE marking. For construction products currently relevant to the UK notification body, the UK conformity assessment of manufacturers, importers and distributors may need to either arrange for the transfer of the files and corresponding certificates from the UK notification body to an EU 2027 body, or apply for a new certificate with an EU 2027 notification body. A unique economic operators registration and identification number is required to trade with the UK from January of this year. And moving on. Some of the challenges that we're currently, I suppose, meeting head on is the designers and specifiers that are working on behalf of our clients and ourselves. They need to be aware of the new requirements with the construction products when they're specifying either in Europe or in the UK. Short term, we've been finding some problems with delays and customs, etc. But again, hopefully it's only short term. It won't be a continuous thing. So project planners and project managers are having to just move their schedule slightly to ensure that they're meeting the client's requirements. Construction operation teams are aware of product requirements. Subcontractors and third-party suppliers are aware of the new requirements. Additional customer requirements on importing and exporting products that may delay projects. Additional audit requirements to suit both jurisdictions, as much as both conformity assessment and the CE marking are more or less the same thing. Hopefully in the future there may be some kind of realignment, but for now we have to audit to both the different jurisdictions. And then we have to find new suppliers in both jurisdictions where they don't have the current certification. And again, we have to come to right to audit agreements with some of them. And moving on to Ian now.
Great. Great. Well, thank you very much for that whistle-stop tour through your experience. And we've already got a question come in, which we'll come to later. So let's now move on to that topic of small business. Ian O'Donnell, Director at the Federation for Small Businesses. Thanks for being with us today. You have a good feel for the specific opportunities and, of course, challenges SMEs face and what help is available. So over to you. Thanks very much, Ian.
Thank you very much. And just to give, first of all, a bit of an introduction to the FSB, if you're unaware of the organisation. So if we just move on to the slide for that. The FSB has 165,000 members, and it's the UK's largest business group. So we have a large volume of data, both anecdotal and hard data, that we're able to draw on when looking at some of these challenges and opportunities. And all the members are small business owners, self-employed, and often embedded into their communities as well. We're a non-profit, and our mission at the FSB is to help smaller businesses achieve their ambitions. So we've recently completed a survey, and the next slide gives you some of the top line numbers from that survey. So 25% of businesses, small businesses, said that they've temporarily halted export sales. 11% are considering permanent stop of export, and 70% have experienced delays on import and export. So across the board, there are definitely challenges being found. And what we're finding is that while some of those are teething problems, and there's no doubt that many of those will be alleviated over the coming months, some of those are baked in and are challenges which will need adjustment to legislation, need adjustment to the trade agreement in order to resolve those challenges. So that gives you a bit of a headline sort of state of play, if you like, for small businesses in the current climate. So what are the challenges that are facing small businesses? What are those things that at the moment are causing some to stop altogether, some to consider a permanent stop, and are causing some of those delays and challenges? So the next slide goes through some of the challenges that we're getting feedback on. One of them is rules of origin. So, one of the interesting things about this particular trade deal is the first trade deal ever done, which was designed to move two economic units apart rather than closer together. And that's created a lot of challenges. So whereas rules of origin are there in all trade agreements designed to help organizations to maintain competitive advantage, etc., but that's normally designed to at least move them closer together. In this case, it's caused a lot of challenges as businesses try to unpick where their supply chain and what that means from a rules of origin perspective. And that's created a great deal of lack of understanding, but also some unexpected costs for the supply chain. VAT and tariffs have caused a lot of uncertainty, especially for businesses selling to consumer across borders, internet-based businesses, etc. That's caused a lot of challenges. Logistics challenges. Customs are definitely, all learning their way at the moment through the process, and that has definitely caused considerable delays. Those are starting to alleviate, but are by no means fully slick yet in that process. Divergence of regulatory frameworks, in particular, for example, the one we're focused on at the moment is the data agreement. One of the things that's crucial is that we have data alignment and we're able to maintain the data adequacy. That's still not a completely guaranteed outcome, and we're waiting to hope that that continues in the right direction and that that is agreed, because obviously you can see the challenges for all of us in business if we can't freely move data around. And reduced skills pool. So one of the challenges around freedom to people is around the ease of skills being available in the UK, but also skills moving to other parts of Europe as we need to, perhaps as businesses are increasingly mobile, the ability to move that around. At the moment, some of these challenges we feel are slightly masked by the COVID pandemic. And so it'll be interesting as we start to move into a non-lockdown scenario to see whether some more challenges arise. So briefly look there at challenges, but what are the opportunities? And the next slide goes through where we feel that there are some opportunities, and we're getting some feedback from our members about. So one is, many members previously only exported to Europe, and that was largely frictionless. they've already built up warm relationships. So they've already got an export opportunity. They've not got to go and find it, but there's now an export process that needs to be gone through. So obviously there are things like the Brexit Support Fund to help them set in place export tools, their knowledge and understanding to become an exporter in a non-frictionless environment. The great benefit of that is that many of those businesses then, once they've got those systems in place, can look to use those in other environments and look to therefore export to a wider range of economies than they did do previously, because they now have that knowledge and expertise and systems in place. So there is an opportunity for small businesses to extend their export opportunities. Short term, there is an opportunity for the UK internal market, increased opportunity due to import challenges. So if you are a manufacturer in the UK, service provider in the UK, then make the most of the short term opportunity that there is within the UK market, while those looking to export to the UK are still finding their way through the process. Onshoring has also become a growing theme, not just based on the Brexit, has to be said. This is partly due to some of the building of resilience from the outcome of the COVID pandemic and one or two other issues in that as well. But one of the things that the whole process, when we're looking at delays in customs and so on, has created a challenge for just-in-time operations. So there is an opportunity to create UK-based supply chains, and also that has the benefits of regulatory alignment and all of those sort of things. So that is a benefit for smaller businesses to then become a part of the supply chain where previously they were finding they weren't. And of course, one of the things we're really pressing for at the FSB is the small business chapters to be included in future free trade agreements with other economies as those come online. And so we create better opportunities for small businesses to trade that may not have been there previously. So there's just a whistle-stop tour of some of what we're getting on feedback from our members about the challenges, the opportunities. If you want to know more, if you are a small business looking to find your way through this, then do visit our Brexit Hub, the UK Transition Hub, on our website, which has a lot of information in there around where you can get help, support, advice, guidance, funding, and so on to help you with the transition to become an exporter and to find your way through what can sometimes be a bit of a minefield. So there's a whistle-stop tour of how it's been affecting small businesses over the last few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Ian. That's very interesting. It's good to see a balance of opportunity and challenge, not to underestimate the significance of the challenge in the short term. Thank you very much. So, Matt Gantley, CEO of the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. Thanks for joining us today. Now, Matt's camera is non-operational, so we won't be able to see Matt, but we'll be able to hear Matt. So, Matt, can you help us clarify what's changed, what's not, and how UCAS is navigating the Brexit deal? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vince. I'd love to do that. So, first of all, may I say thank you to CQI for this opportunity to speak about a topic that we believe adds real tangible benefit to the UK economy and the broader global economy, and has a valuable role to play for government, public and enterprise, especially at this critical time for the United Kingdom, 3 months on since the development of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement between the United Kingdom and the European Union. As Vince has mentioned, my name is Matt Gantley. I'm the Chief Executive of the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UCAS, which is a government-appointed national accreditation body for the United Kingdom. And I'd like to speak to you for around about 15 minutes, firstly to just clarify some key aspects of what has and what hasn't changed for accreditation and conformity assessment. And also just to clarify what it is, what accreditation is, why it matters, especially in the context of mutual recognition and facilitating business and trade. And of course, at the end, we have the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. I'm sure there'll be some very specific questions, technical questions. And so I'm joined by my colleague, Kevin Belson, who is the certification specialist at UCAS, and he's also the chair of the EA Certification Committee, to answer any specific technical questions that you may have. So just moving on then to get to the first key point. So why does accreditation matter? As the previous pictures showed, at work, home and play, it matters because alongside standards, accreditation is a hidden infrastructure that ensures that we can be confident in our daily lives from the moment that we wake up in our bed, where the materials are tested for fire safety, to our breakfast, with the quality of the water in our kettle, to the food safety of the butter on our toast, from the data security of our IT systems to product certification, or the certification of personal protective equipment to our healthcare professionals. There are so many ways, thousands of ways of which accreditation plays a fundamental role in protecting our work lives and our home lives. If you just go back to the previous slides, and I'll just give you a quick overview of UCAS as itself as an organisation. I've already mentioned it in terms of why we're here, but our fundamental purpose is to underpin the UK and global quality infrastructure using our independence and our impartiality and expertise. We aim to ensure that there's trust and confidence in the products and the services that we all rely upon in our home lives, our personal lives, and in our work lives. And we can actually trace our history back to 1996 with the formation of the British Calibration Service, but we were actually formed as a single entity 25 years ago. Major aspect to take away from this slide is that we are a not-for-profit, non-profit distributing organisation, and we are a public authority appointed organisation to undertake a public authority activity, I should say. And I've highlighted in this slide the specific regulations, which is a key part, as Vince has mentioned, of what has changed. Well, these regulations have been brought into place now. These original EU regulations have been brought into place into appropriate UK, GB and Northern Irish regulations in order to ensure that we are appointed as the national accreditation body. In any normal year, we'll be delivering around 33,000 assessment days to over 33,000 organisations. We're still continuing to do that despite the challenges of the pandemic, particularly switching to remote and a blended approach to assessments. We have around 190 assessment managers and draw upon technical expertise of around 700 technical experts covering a very, very broad range of areas, from forensics to water sampling to COVID-19 testing, pathology laboratories, asbestos testing, engineering inspections. So we draw upon those specialists in order to ensure the technical rigour of our accreditation. Now, if we're just moving on then to the next point, a key part of what we are as an organisation is supporting government. And this, of course, again, is a key area where there has been change at a EU and UK level as EU-based driven regulation has been brought into UK law. But we've been working very closely with a range of different government bodies, regulators, in order to ensure that the existing regimes for regulatory recognition of conformity assessment, of accreditation, of testing, inspection and certification is fully in place, and that's smoothly happened and was fully put into place at the end of last year. But there's many areas of which UCAS provides accreditation, as already mentioned. For example, in the COVID-19 testing to release program, which I'm sure you've heard about, from asbestos inspections and consulting to construction products and the development of the new construction products regulator or the new building safety regulator, to the food safety, organic produce, farm assurance, water regulations. There's many aspects of which have been changed because of Brexit, but we've smoothly transitioned them into new arrangements working closely with government. A major aspect of our work as well, of course, is the accreditation of voluntary driven conformity assessment, and that's particularly active in the inspection and the certification side, and largely that has been unaffected by Brexit. But we'll go into more detail in a moment, particularly in relation to the more product certification side, particularly in the connection with UKCA and CE marking. Just moving on now to the next point, which relates to just checking to see you get to the next slide, in terms of our governance ourselves as an organisation, and to ensure that we are representative. We don't have shareholders, we have trustees, guarantors, and in fact, Ian's just spoke before, and the Federation of Small Businesses is actually one of our members, one of our trustees, in effect one of our shareholders, for want of a better phrase. We have a number of different colleges of those trustees to ensure that our approach, our strategy, our focus is in the right direction, making sure that it's representative for government bodies, regulators, customer associations, business bodies, and professional institutes. For example, the CQI is also a member of UCAS. We're also part of a broader infrastructure, often called the quality infrastructure of the UK, UKQI, which alongside our sister organisations, BSI, on the standards, National Standards Development Body, and NPL on the metrology, scientific and industrial metrology side, we work together closely with the National Measurements Office in order to form the UK quality infrastructure. We also have a number of different bodies of technical representation, and also we have strategic advisory groups. For example, we set up a group very similar to CQI, looking at the implications of the fourth industrial revolution. So just moving on then to the next point. Now, I wanted just to help very briefly, just to define what accreditation is. I know we've got a broad audience here today. Many of you will be very familiar with it, but it's worth just pausing for a second, just define what accreditation is. Accreditation is the ongoing formal recognition of the competence, impartiality, and integrity of conformity assessment bodies for specific tasks such as testing, inspection, certification, verification, and validation. And that's done according to a range of international standards, which on the next slide I'll show you. We are appointed by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy through a memorandum of understanding in order to undertake that important national role on behalf of government and the general public to ensure the competence, impartiality and integrity of those essential conformity assessment activities. So we are as well peer evaluated, and we're peer evaluated by the European Cooperation for Accreditation, EA for short, and we're also part of the larger framework, international framework of accreditation, which brings about a fundamental point which I'll touch on in a moment, which is mutual recognition. And we then accredit conformity assessment bodies according to relevant standards, which the next slide shows you. I won't go into detail with this, but I'll leave you, of course, you have the slides to go into more detail. And of course, you can contact us of any information about this, but this slide shows you all the list of those international standards, which we hold those conformity assessment bodies to account to ensure that competence, impartiality and integrity. And if we move to the next slide, we can see that in terms of the expression of that, that confidence, that trust and that confidence in those conformity assessment bodies is the UCAS accreditation mark. And actually, you may have already noticed that the UCAS, we went through an evolution of our branding. We updated that branding in January. And so these are the new UCAS accreditation logos or marks, and they'll be rolled out to all forms of conformity assessment over the next 3 years. But that covers from management systems through product certification and personal certification, validation, verification, and calibration proficiency testing, as you can see. So we'll just move on to the next key point, which goes to the major question that Vince has raised, and that it deals with mutual recognition and equivalence between testing, inspection and certification that goes on globally. Now, what's important to recognize is, or to reiterate, is why does that exist? Well, mutual recognition exists to ensure that a product or a service, once it's tested, inspected or certified, that it is accepted everywhere across the globe. That is particularly important to avoid any technical barriers to trade. We often talk about trade tariffs and the tax barriers, the financial barriers to trade, but actually it's technical barriers to trade which can actually be the most disruptive between trading nations. And so through the World Trade Organization, there is a series of chapters and agreements and protocols in dealing with the reduction of those technical barriers to trade. And accreditation and conformity assessment is a major vehicle to ensure that those technical barriers to trade are reduced. And so UCAS is part of the international framework of accreditation. We're part of IF, the International Accreditation Forum, which deals with certification, and ILAC, which is the body that deals with inspection and testing. And so there are two types of mutual recognition at two levels. First of all, there's technical recognition between accreditation bodies, and that happens for ILAC and IEF, and that is brought into place through peer evaluation, as I've already mentioned. And UCAS as an organization is peer evaluated by EA, the European regional body for accreditation, which is part of of course, IF and ILAC. And we are peer evaluated according to 17011. That's the standard, the international standard that we must meet. As well as being a part of Europe, we have to meet the requirements of the regulation 765, which has fundamental principles in the way that accreditation operates across Europe. That was particularly driven through an EU regulation. Of course, that EU regulation no longer applies to the UK. However, the fundamental principles of non-competition, that we are public authority activity, remain intact in both our operation in Great Britain and in Northern Ireland. However, because UCAS is no longer within a member state, therefore we are no longer recognised by the European Commission according to the recognition of those regulations, but the fundamental principles of 765 remain, and therefore our technical recognition and our mutual recognition across EA, our technical recognition across all the other accreditation bodies in Europe remains exactly the same. And Brexit has our membership of IF and ILAC remains unaffected by Brexit completely. And there's another second very important part of mutual recognition, and that's bilateral agreements between states. And we'll come into this into more detail, but the objective behind that is to promote trade between nations to facilitate market access. Now, there has been, as part of the development of the UK EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement, there was a desire by the UK government to create mutual recognition, particularly between the UK Conformity Assessment Mark and the EU CE marking, but that was not an objective that the EU wanted, and so therefore there is now two systems, and I'll go into detail about how that works in practice. So there's no mutual recognition agreement between the UK and the EU. However, that doesn't mean to say that a UCAS accredited testing inspection is not recognised in the EU, particularly on the voluntary side, but it does mean that, that there are implications, in particularly relating to product certification, which I'll come on to. But just moving quickly to the next slide, to understand mutual recognition, it's also important to understand the number of signatories. Now, there is over 102 signatories, particularly from ILAC side on the laboratory and inspection side. And we move on to the following slide as well, to the ILAC side. That shows you the number of and the spread of the mutual recognition, that the IF signatories all across the world. In real terms, what that means is there is around 60,000 laboratories that come under mutual recognition, around 10,000 inspection bodies, 12,000 calibration laboratories, and around 8,000 certification bodies across the globe. So moving on then to the next slide, which comes back to this key point to do with UCAS and EA membership. Now, you may have heard that UCAS membership is no longer recognised by the European Commission, and that is, of course, true because we're no longer an accreditation body based in a member state. However, the fundamental principles of that regulation still remain in place, and we are evaluated according to those by the peer evaluation. Actually, UCAS's peer evaluation is next month. And that's the basis of which we will be mutually recognised by all other accreditation bodies within EA, and then therefore across the globe. Now, because we're no longer within a member state, we no longer meet the requirements or the original conditions or criteria of EA membership. However, we've been working very closely with the executive and leadership team of EA, as well as all of our colleagues and peers within EA, in order to change the membership criteria. We've had a number of different meetings on that point, and we're now very close to settling on some amendments to those criteria, which keep the integrity of the EU process in place, while still allowing the UK as well, the second largest economy in Europe, to still be a major part of the European accreditation network. So moving on then to the next slide, which relates to the UK Conformity Assessment Mark. Now, I'm sure you've heard quite a lot about this, and actually Trevor's already talked about this in detail, but as you're aware, from the 1st of January 2021, a new regulatory regime came into place that covered the manufacture of goods previously covered under the EU's CE marking. So I wanted just to quickly come through a couple of key points. But first of all, to change in the status of UK bodies, UK conformity assessment bodies, who were previously notifying under EU regulations. All UK-based bodies retain, those conformity assessment bodies retain their status as conformity assessment bodies for the purpose of certifying goods to be placed on the Northern Irish marketplace. In addition to this, UK-based conformity assessment bodies have now been automatically, by law, acquired additional status of UK-approved bodies for the purpose of certifying goods to be placed on the GB market. So UK-based recognised third-party organisations, or RTPOs, and user inspectorates and technical assessment bodies, and all the very specific elements of the regulation have all been put into place, and they've been given letters of appointment or designation. And so the UCAS schedule has been entirely updated, as well as the replacement for the NANDO database, which is called the UK Market Conformity and Assessment Bodies database, is now fully in place. Now, just briefly again, the outcome of the UK and EU trade agreement. The UK has, of course, successfully agreed a technical barriers to trade chapter, which reaffirms and builds upon the World Trade Organization technical barriers to trade agreement, and will help to ensure that the respective regulatory regimes are not discriminatory and do not create unnecessary obstacles to trade for exporters. Now, while the UK's ambitions to secure a number of sector-specific annexes as part of that technical barrier to trade offer was not successful, and it was not possible to reach an agreement with the EU, the UK's proposal for mutual recognition agreement is still something that the UK wants to proceed, but at the present there is no mutual recognition. So without this mutual recognition in place, conformity assessment bodies in the UK are no longer recognised as competent to perform conformity assessment against EU regulatory requirements, for example, for the purposes of CE marking products to be placed on the EU market. Similarly, EU-based bodies are not recognised as competent to perform conformity assessment bodies against Great British requirements for the purposes of UK conformity assessment marking. And so those two regimes are now separate. However, they do still share, and it's likely to for many years that they will share the same designated or harmonised standards, and they're likely to remain very much harmonised for a long period of time until they change. However, at the moment, there is no mutual recognition between those. So just moving to a key point of the UK government's position on the validity of existing certificates. While conformity assessment bodies may still wish to issue certificates to existing certificate holders that are expressly badged as certificated of conformity against UK legislation and valid for UK CA marking purposes, the effect of the legislation laid in Parliament prior to the end of this transition period is that certificates issued by UK bodies before the end of the transition period continue to be valid for the purposes of placing products in the GB market. So in effect, what that means is then the existing certification that was already in place, for example, for EU CE marking for the GB marketplace, can be used by that same conformity assessment body in order to put in place the appropriate UK CA marking. So in terms of the UK's position on the issuing of new certificates, that's also something we're going to actually go into more detail later on in this presentation. So if we move then to the next slide. So just wanted to pick up some key points to do with the CE marking. Now, as I've already stated, UCAS is no longer accrediting those bodies for EU notification status. However, a key part of the way that testing and certification works on a global basis is often that the manufacturing and the production of products is done, for example, in China or outside the EU. And so conformity assessment bodies and testing and certification is often done in many different localities all around the world. And there is an important document called the Blue Guide within published by the European Commission that states that the manufacturer of the good that needs to be CE marking can provide test reports or other elements of its technical documentation. The notified body who will then approve that for the use of the CE marking can take these reports into account if it assumes a full responsibility for those results. So an EU notified body preparing a type report can still use a UCAS accredited testing or inspection or factory production control certification as part of the technical file, as long as they can validate and take ownership for that. So the underpinning testing and certification can still be done by a UCAS accredited body. And also, notified bodies have the ability as well to subcontract to other organisations outside the EU, again, as long as they are able to take ownership of that technical responsibility, because they, as the EU-based conformity assessment body, notified body, will take responsibility for that that CE mark with that organisation. Okay, I just want to move on to one last slide. And that just gives pinpoints you to some further information relating to mutual recognition, of which you can have a little bit more and download that information from ILAC and IF. And I've produced some other slides in this pack, which you can have a look at, which goes into more detail, particularly to do with the UK government policy on conformity assessment. So with that, Vince, I'll hand back to you, and we can hopefully deal with some specific questions.
Thanks very much, Matt. I'll invite Ian and Trevor back as well, please. Thank you very much for that. There's a kind note in the from Paul saying thank you for what UCAS is achieving, as a member of UCAS, CQI as a member of UCAS, I've already passed my recognition on to UCAS for the enormous amount of work that you guys did over the past couple of years to navigate conformity assessment through to where we are now. So I'll start off with a couple of technical questions. I think you've actually answered most of them, Matt, in your talk, but there's a couple of questions here that we'll kick off with. One of them is a bit of a crystal ball question, and that's really looking to the future. Recognizing at the moment there is no mutual recognition of UKCA and the CE marking, is that on the agenda, do you know, with BEIS and the government? Is that a direction of travel, or can we assume that this is probably one of those baked-in issues that Ian mentioned?
I think it is for now. I think obviously the UK and the EU has come to a deal that took some time to deliver. So I think we're in a stage now where we've got to, both sides, with the UK and the EU, have got to make sure that that works effectively and identify any areas where it isn't working effectively. I know there is a technical barrier to trade committee working group that's going to be established to look at any issues on both sides. Let's remember that the UK and the EU are very much aligned in the way that they look at key aspects of product certification and product safety, for example. And so there already is a lot of similarity. Almost the systems are almost identical now, but different marks. But as it stands, the European Commission doesn't want to look at mutual recognition with the UK in this area. So it may be some years before that there is a change of policy in that area, and that is UK government policy to find mutual recognition. But I think for businesses, I think they need to focus on making sure that they're compliant with these requirements. It may be some time before there's a change in that status.
That's very useful, thank you. And could you just talk about Northern Ireland and UKCA CE marking and how it's working there? I've got one question about that.
Yeah, this will probably pass to my colleague Kevin Belson. He can give a more general overview of it, because this is obviously a very specific technical area, but the CE NI mark. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I did see that question come up while I was watching. The question was primarily about what actually applies in Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland, the question was, is it the CE mark or is it UKCA? It's actually kind of in between. It's a special CE mark, which is called the UK NI mark. It is governed as part of the European Commission system. And so the conformity assessment rules around it are those developed by EA, and there is a document called EA 217 which defines some of that work. So for any goods entering Northern Ireland, that applies UKNI. However, a number of notified bodies, as they will be under that system in Northern Ireland, are also UKCA bodies, and Northern Ireland conformity assessment bodies are able to certify to UKCA for goods leaving Northern Ireland and coming into the UK. So it's quite complex because Northern Ireland is sitting in the middle, sounds a bad way of putting it, but they're sitting in between, supporting the European side and the UK side as well. And that's why it's important, I think, that the processes applied for conformity assessment bodies at the European level and at the UK level are very similar to help that be as smooth a process as possible. So I hope that helps.
Thanks very much. I'm just sticking on UK QCA for a second. I've got a question about which may be interesting if UCAS have got any data on this, or Trevor's got any insight from his sector. Says, what is the rate of uptake of UK CEA mark looking like? And do you think organisations that need to be ready will be so by the end of this year?
Yeah, so Vincent, we're finding any of the suppliers that we're dealing with, most definitely, I think the UK conformity assessment has been in the pipeline for quite some time. I think because of the 12th hour agreement with the UK government and the EU kind of back in December, I think that put a lot of pressure. There was a real unknown to it, and I think a lot of businesses put a lot of contingency plans in place where they would have been dealing with the EU and vice versa. You know, the EU businesses working with the UK. I think a lot of them, it's because of the unknown. A lot of businesses were pre-prepared long in advance of the actual agreement because nobody knew what way it was going to work. So I think everybody was kind of planning around anyone that did need to be planned. But look, there's still some work to be done in the UK and the CE marking for both sides and both jurisdictions, because there is still some requirements that need to be worked out. Like there's still another deadline to be met, which is December the 31st of this year, where the UK conformity assessment basically cuts off, the UK will cut off the CE marked products completely, and that's the deadline for that.
Yeah, thanks Trevor. Matt, Kevin, anything from you on take up and direction of travel on the CA mark?
Yes, it's Kevin. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Okay. I'll say first of all, from a high level, Kevin, we work very closely with the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, particularly the Office of Product Safety and Standards, and there's a trade group within that team that monitors us very closely in order to understand the overall capacity of UK conformity assessment bodies. So they're tracking very closely to see where there was historically we could have used any one of the EU notified bodies from anywhere within the 27 member states. Now obviously they have to be based in the United Kingdom, and so they're looking very closely to see where the gaps are. And actually, but at UCAS level, and we're reporting to BEIS on this, is there are a number of applications that we receive, quite a high number of applications we received from previously EU-based notified bodies who want to become UKCA bodies, and we're making sure that if there are any gaps, that there is sufficient capacity. So I believe there will be enough capacity for UKCA within the UK marketplace. Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And I was going to touch on that point as well, actually. But I think from discussions with UK conformity assessment bodies, there's a lot of readiness, and people from the conformity assessment body side are doing all they can to support their customers. I know that's key to a lot of the conformity assessment body group meetings that we listen into, and it is about capacity. And as Matt said, there are a number of inquiries from EU 27 notified bodies. And I did notice another question pop up, and if I may, Mr. Chair, just for a moment, if that's okay, pick up on that as part of that. There's a question that said, essentially, can a European body be a UKCA body? very short, quickly on that one, the answer is that no. One of the primary rules set by UK government is that a body, to be an approved body for UKCA, must be a UK legal entity. And that's not just a UK legal entity as in a brass plate on a wall. There are various rules and descriptions around what that means in terms of their presence in the UK. So it's fully differentiated between the UK activity and wherever else that body is based. But I mean, to conclude that, all of the activities we are doing with BEIS and other government departments and with the notified and approved bodies are aimed at being as ready as it's possible to be and supporting the customers as the demand comes in. Of course, we can't predict everything, but we don't.
Sure. Thanks very much, Kevin and Matt. Yeah, a question for you here, which is one of our members is experiencing more difficulty exporting from the UK than importing from the EU. Is it that way around for your members?
Obviously, that tends to be where we hear most of the noise, because that tends to be the majority of the activity. But actually, equally, a lot of our retail members are saying they are having equal problems importing stock into the UK. So it's a both-way problem. But also, a lot of UK businesses, retailers are finding that their European suppliers are just saying, actually, it's just too difficult, so we're not going to supply into the UK either. So some of them are finding supply chains are broken up. For example, I'm a keen cyclist. The saddle I most like is manufactured in the West Midlands, but it's owned by an Italian company, and all their manufacturing output goes to Italy and then gets re-imported back into the UK. And at the moment, they're not importing into the UK. So, it has caused a lot of supply chain problems and a lot of challenges in both directions. It's not just UK trying to export.
Thanks very much. A question for Trevor. I mean, it was a great overview of the approach that you've taken. I was just wondering, how much effort has it taken the quality team in sort of planning and managing this stuff, and how much in terms of effort, in terms of liaising, working, educating customers and suppliers?
Yeah, look, there's still a lot of work to be done. There was quite a lot of stuff going on. The EU and the British governments didn't help us in that challenge in the 12th hour agreement, and because like that there was a lot of unknowns. So we were planning for an agreement and a no deal agreement, and yeah, there was quite a lot in it. Still in all, there is still quite a lot of work to be done around education in the requirements. There is still, like I say, there's still a deadline to be met this year with the UK conformity assessment, and where the UK government will cut off the CE mark products completely in the UK market, and I'm speaking specifically for construction products. There's still quite a bit to be done there, because there's situations where we would have projects that would be ongoing kind of pre-Brexit, and they will be still ongoing post-Brexit, and we still have to meet the requirements of our clients, and we have to kind of educate our clients on the requirements. As much as the CE marking and the UK conformity assessment requirements don't differ at all, actually. Like all the European standards are still applicable in both jurisdictions. They're all still aligned in every sense of the word there that Mata has already covered on that stuff. But there is still a little bit of understanding that new projects going forward, that there will be a complete cut-off from EU kind of conform CE mark products. There will be a complete cut-off going forward from the end of this year, which I think some suppliers and some vendors, some designers, design consultants, they will still need to be educated on that, because they may be overlooking it.
Brilliant. That's very interesting. Final question, quick fire round, if you like, for the panel on that topic of education. Any sources of information education that you would suggest to people on this topic? Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Yes, I would suggest that anyone who wants to research this further, then they look to the UK website. the UKC. There's a whole host of information on UKCA, as well as the UCAS website. There's guidance, but that's primarily focused at the conformity assessment bodies, as well as the Institute of Export and Trade. There's a lot of information there regarding aspects of trade and technical barriers to trade, and so we can provide the links for those to CQI for them to look, for anyone to look at those further.
That's great, Ian. Of course, you've got lots of information. I've used your Brexit Hub regularly. Small business. Is there anything else outside of your excellent resources that you'd recommend?
I mean, I would recommend actually looking at the UK Gov website. You know, it's sometimes a bit hard to find your way around, but there is some good, useful information on there, and actually, therefore, using something like the FSB website, which often signposts it in a more useful, friendly format than trying to navigate the UK Gov website, can work quite well. And there are some quite good webinars. We've been running some as FSB, and I know other good organisations have been running webinars. So it's worth having a look and finding a webinar on some of the topics by a reputable organisation. That's definitely worth investigating, because that can be quite insightful sometimes to hear other people's stories of how they've handled problems.
Great, that's very useful. And Trevor, especially in the construction sector and your geographical context?
Yeah, so I suppose for Ireland, it's the National Standards Authority of Ireland. For the UK, British Standards. In France, the French Authority, Germany, the DIN, and the Netherlands, all the European countries. I would be directing people specifically towards the standards authorities in their own countries. They've quite a good bit of information there for kind of suiting importing and exporting to both jurisdictions.
Thanks very much. Well, look, we've run out of time, slightly over time, so we're going to draw it to a close there. There's lots of resources out there. Heartily recommend the UCAS pages, FSB pages. Of course, there's a CQI Brexit Hub, the disruptive change tools to help you plan and understand disruption. And this recording and the slides will be in the members area in due course. The next webinars coming up are a question of leadership, managing change and mental health in a time of crisis, and psychology in quality. But before then, in the meantime, thank you to our panel, Trevor, Ian and Matt. Really appreciate your time, your insight, and all the pointers you've given us to places to go for more information. Thank you everybody else for joining. Until next time, stay safe. Goodbye.